This is Learning to Dad
I'm the cool dad. That's my thing.
with Tyler Ross.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills.
I'm gonna have fun, and you're gonna have fun.
Hello, welcome to Learning to Dad. This is Tyler Ross, and my guest today is Mark Winkler. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Absolutely, man. It's my pleasure.
Oh, yeah, we got connected over Instagram. I think a mutual admiration of what we're each doing. You are Fatherhood_Circle. You've got a
Yes.
book. You got a book coming out called My Daughter's Keeper. It sounds like
Absolutely.
sounds like your experience with custody and growth as a father. And the thing that sounds like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it is Manhood Camp. And
Yes.
I never have napkins or tissues or anything, but I brought them today.
You got prepared, huh, Tyler?
I'm
Okay.
ready for you, Mark, I think. But I mean, I feel like there's so much to talk to you about that I just want to, I guess, just jump in a little bit. The point of the whole conversation is to share a wide variety of experiences from people that are super deliberate and thoughtful about being a dad. And everything that you're involved in seems to be motivated exclusively from a desire to be an amazing father and mentor to people. So can you just give us a quick little background on, where you're from, what you did up until having your daughter?
Sure. Well, as my wife always points out, she says, I'm from St. Louis, which I am. But I always like to start my story off in New York because I moved there so young when I was about 12 years old.
Yeah.
But so I'm from New York by way of St. Louis. I grew up in New York, and that's kind of where I developed and came to my understanding of things I like, I don't like, things I want to participate in my life. And so that along that journey, it brought me to California. I'm sort of hitting the fast forward button here a lot, but it brought me to California with work that I was doing with my brother, who was an entertainment manager. So he brought me in to help him with that endeavor. And so we got involved with a pretty big company out here in California. And so and that relationship developed, but it sort of developed and then went high, then it went low, then it sort of phased out. And then, so after that relationship was dissolving, that's when I started to get really involved with, wanting to sort of go back to my roots. When I was in New York, I'd started working with youth and parents. Mm-hmm. And so I got back into that. But so it was in California that I became a father. But a lot of my journey in terms of my interest with working with youth and families, I think that was cultivated in New York City.
Yeah.
So that was the long and short of it.
No, that's perfect, because I want to talk as much as I'm interested in knowing about you. I want to hear about your parenting experience. So at what point along your professional path was having your child introduced?
Well, that was when I got out here to California.
Okay.
Right. I became a father when I met this young lady and we had a child together. We tried to do the parenting thing together. We were just oceans apart in terms of our philosophy on parenting. Yeah. And we decided that that wasn't going to work out. So that, led to a separation. At first, I think it was a peaceful separation. Then it turned unpeaceful, and that and a lot of this I talk about in my book, Tyler, in terms of what transpired after the conversations turned from peaceful and peaceful agreements on how to co-parent to it not being peaceful. I'd already been a mentor, but there was a much different experience when I became a father, right? It was a world that I knew in parts because my brother was a father by that time, my older brother and my younger brother. So I thought I kind of knew what fathering was going to be based upon my experience as an uncle, but I found that it was much different.
What do you think was the biggest difference?
I think the biggest difference was you can't leave. You come in as an uncle and bells and whistles and you're throwing dollar bills around and the kids love you. You bring things that the parents don't want the kids to have, sweets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you are the favorite uncle. Why can't you be more like Uncle Bart, right? but then you realize that as a father, you have to make decisions that sometimes your children will be joyous about, and sometimes they will give you the eye like, I don't like you at this moment.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the biggest difference. I had to live in that space as a father. I had to live in that experience. And as an uncle, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. But it sounds like a lot of your moving forward, a lot like your book, it sounds like is inspired by the experience you have with your daughter's mother. Can you speak to that a little bit and how that transitioned?
Yeah, I think there was, and I think like in a lot of relationships that begin with, two people not really understanding or having, mutual understanding of what the other person wants. You kind of build in expectations that aren't real, or you try to build in thoughts for the other person, but you don't really have a foundational conversation that you need to have. And this was that type of relationship. So when we realized that the relationship was not working, by the time we realized that the child was here.
Yeah.
So we tried and move past some of those that's this thing that we now understand about each other, but it didn't work. And what happened, and I talk about in the book, we began to have conflict, and that conflict began to present itself in front of the child, my child and her child, our child. And I said, hey, look, I can't. This is not. We can't do this.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a decision that was made that, when we parted ways, we said we're still going to try and have, as I mentioned, a relationship, a parenting relationship that was basically in the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
But it didn't end up that way, right? Because there were certain things that I was still working on and within myself, right? Certain things that I had not really fully got developed with myself. And one of the things was just, understanding that when you close, before you open another door, you fully close the door that you were leaving out of. And, I didn't do that, right? I didn't have, it wasn't any indiscretions, but, I developed a relationship and a friendship with the person who's now my wife. And as a result of that, when my child's mother discovered this, there was a turn in the conversation about our parenting conversation.
Yeah.
And that, I think that was the beginning of the strife. That was the beginning of an emerging new narrative about how she, was discussing me to the public.
Yeah.
And, that narrative led to, me being not a good father, not a good person. Right. And as a result of that, I knew and I saw the mounting narrative that was growing. And I said to myself, look, I don't want to go to court. As a father, I didn't want to have a relationship with my daughter and my child's mother in a court. But I realized that at a certain point, that if I did not go and I did not file, that eventually her narrative was the path that it was taking. I knew that it was leading towards some sort of court action. So I said that I wanted to get in front of that, right? I wanted to get in front of that narrative, and I wanted to put what was the person that I wanted to present that and what I wanted as a father. It had nothing to do with angst or anger or bitterness about the mother. In fact, my paperwork had very little to do with the mother. It had more so to do with my right as a father and my child's right as a child to have a good father in her life.
Yeah.
And so that paperwork hit, and then that, it ballooned into a lot. We can talk a little bit about it more, but the bottom line was, and I tell fathers this all the time, I said, if you're in a situation where you are, where you see that you cannot have a fruitful parenting relationship. By fruitful, I mean that, you can see your child at the appointed time, and your mother can have, the mother can have time as well, and the child can get, an equal amount of time with both parents, or at least a fair amount of time with both parents. then you have to go in and establish, your parental rights. I said, either way, you have to do that, right?
Yeah.
But if you find out that you cannot have a relationship, then you have to go in and make certain that you file. And I did that. And luckily, I did that before any action was taken against me. And, the court was able to see that, hey, look, here's a father that has presented a case. And this case was that, he's been a good father. And I documented everything that I did with my child. I kept good paperwork. I was very methodical about making certain that when I presented my case, it was not a case based upon emotions. Not that I was not emoting,
Sure.
not that I didn't care.
It's
Like
your daughter.
wasn't some sort of robot, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't Spock here or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
But I presented things in a way that I could back up what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell the fathers that I work with to do that. We can talk about that a little later.
Yeah, you had a wonderful Instagram post that I listened to where you speak to the relationship with your child's mother, and there has to be love there and there has to be respect there. And it sounds like what was at a time a very adversarial relationship has, at least from your perspective, become one of respect and acknowledging the importance of mom and the importance of dad and the importance of working together. What kind of work was done on yourself to get from where you were to having that perspective?
I think for me, I had to step outside of myself, and I had to not come from an egotistical perspective, and I had to look at what was most important to my daughter, right? And what was most important to my daughter was that she was able to have a relationship with both of her parents, free of, trying to make a decision about, is the mother okay? Is the father okay? I didn't want how I felt about the mother to interfere with the child's, thought processes about her mother, right? And that began really for me. It began in the court process, right? Because what I knew, Tyler, was if I went into court with a certain feeling, a certain thought of negativity about the mother, that was going to cloud every decision that I had to make, right? It was going to cloud me being able to put down certain things in the paperwork about the mother, about our relationship, the things that were helping, the things that were good. If I was coming from the perspective of, this mother at this point is trying to prevent me from seeing my child, right? And that hurts me. And even though it did hurt me, I knew that if I allowed that to really create and to fill up so much real estate in my mind, that I wouldn't be able to, one, go into court and be fair and balanced about what I said. And beyond that, I think more importantly, I knew that when it came time for me to talk to my daughter about my relationship with her mother and my daughter talking to me about her relationship with her mother, I didn't want anything of negativity to interfere with that. I wanted her to have her own relationship, her own thoughts. So I think it started there in court, and it's continued that way. I'm not going to fabricate and say everything is roses, but everything between me and my daughter and my conversation about the mother is remained consistent. It is, and that is that, as the daughter, you must respect your mother when they're together. I said you have to make certain that you're respectful and that, the time that you guys spend is enjoyable, and you don't say anything disrespectful. When she says things that are disagreement, I listen, or when she has disagreements with her mother, I'll listen. I don't fan the flames to try to make it, into my favor, like I'm the better parent. And, because eventually, as she gets older, speaking of my daughter, she is going to be able to, with her developed mind, look into this matter a little bit closer and with a little bit more intricate understanding. And she's going to say, you know what, my father, if I went in a more negative way, she's going to say, my father, he said a lot of things to me back when I was younger, and that really kept me from developing a relationship with my mother, the potential of a good relationship. And I don't want that to be. And so I think that was the spirit of that clip that you saw.
That's a really beautiful way of putting it. My dad's an attorney. He's a real estate attorney, transactions, but his partners do domestic work. And so I see so many divorces come through the office, and so many of them are emotionally driven and egotistically driven, and it's not about what's best for everybody or the family. It's about what
Mm,
can I get out of that person, what can I take away, how can I hurt them. And
mm,
the egos associated on both sides, the husband and the wife, or wife and wife, husband, whatever it is, like trying, it makes no sense to me, because there's an
right.
easy way to do it and there's a hard way to do it, and it's got to be the ego that makes it the hard way. And
Hmm.
it sounds like a lot of your work is centered around getting that ego in check so that you can be practical and make good decisions for everybody. Is that what, Fatherhood Circle is about?
It is. It is. It's about accountability.
Mhm.
It's about recognizing when that ego is emerging.
Yeah.
It's about understanding, are you doing this for the best interest of your child? Or are you doing this to hurt the other parent? Are you doing this to, give yourself some sort of congratulatory moment? Uh, or are you doing this with the mindset that these decisions that I'm making are going to, profoundly affect what happens to my child, our child, the mother and father's child together in the future, right? And I think that with the Fatherhood Circle, we've developed a conversation that we've developed with the fathers, and this is the beautiful thing. It's when we started the meetings, there was a lot of reticence about sharing and about being accountable. We're men, right? We
Hmm.
we don't we
Yeah.
don't necessarily do those things, right? But as people start coming in, and people repeat, coming in one after, next meeting after the next, we've created an atmosphere where they understand that when you come in and you talk about how you're feeling, whatever experience you're having with your child, whether it be something extreme like court, or whether it just be you're having trouble with your teenage daughter, we ask that you come in and honestly present to us what's happening. And
Yeah.
when I say honestly present, I mean talk about what your role is in this matter, right? The
Mhm.
positive, constructive aspects of your role, and the things that are not positive, things that are deconstructing, things that are taking down the situation in a way that it should not be taken down. And I love the way that the fathers hold the other fathers accountable. And so that's the atmosphere that we're trying to maintain and grow in the Fatherhood Circle.
I have always fancied myself a bit of a loner. Trying to relate to people has been difficult,
Hmm.
but I'm realizing that as a human, I think our inclination is to be part of a group, part of something bigger and better,
Hmm.
to work together. And are you finding that these men, when they become part of a group like Fatherhood Circle, blossom in a way that they become more, available to having real conversations?
Absolutely. Look, we are tribe driven, right?
Yeah.
We have our cliques. We as men, we like sports, and we have particular sport teams. We end up going to the same spots, like in that television show Cheers, where everyone knows our name, right? So we have these moments, right, where this happens, and it's no different in the Fatherhood Circle. Once they come in and they start to feel a part of the tribe, they feel like I can start expressing myself. And the thing about the Fatherhood Circle, it's not mandated, right? So
Mhm.
I talk about in my book that, I knew at a certain point that I could no longer isolate, right? And so I started to reach out to different groups, and I found some groups out here, and a couple of them, one I really love, but it was basically mandated for a lot of the fathers, and I still noticed that reservation to really just talk about what was going on. So that was one of the things that I said, look, if you're mandated, you can come, but this is not. I didn't want to partner with any court situation, because I didn't want this to be that way. I wanted to be a place where if you want to come, you can sit down, we could be in this tribe sort of moment, and we can talk about what's happening, right? And again, it's not all about severe parenting moments like court or something like that. For
Mhm.
instance, recently, a guy just came in and said, hey, look, I'm having trouble with my little princess not talking to me anymore, but his little princess is a teenager now, right?
Yeah.
So that's a real moment, man. My daughter is 11, and I have two stepdaughters who are teenagers, but my biological daughter is 11, and I can see the changes happening. Right? I can see her becoming more independent of thought, which is good, and I'm encouraging that. But it's difficult because it's not all like, okay, dad is right, dad is great, dad is super bad, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, dad, but come on, I don't want to do that, or I just want to be on the phone. And those moments, man, when it happens, it stings. And if you don't have someone that you can talk to about it, you kind of just wrestle with those crazy thoughts. And sometimes in that isolation and that alone, you can make bad decisions, right? You can, your teenage daughter who's becoming a teenager who wants to do something. And if you don't have counsel to tell you, look, you got to give her space to do that, you shut it down. Like, no, you're going with me. We're going to do what we normally do. Like, okay, then I've been doing it with a developing hatred for you.
Yeah.
So that's part of I think the beauty of having those men around you where you can have those type of conversations.
Do you find that it takes very long and when a man first joins the group to have the conversation, are they ready to come out and start talking, or do they have to hear everybody else talk and feel like they've been folded in first?
I think you have to be folded in. I mean, look, we're men, we're conditioned, right? Yeah. I'm reading this book by Devon Franklin, and I talk about the truth about men. And in the book, he talks about being in the man box, right? And in that box, most men are conditioned and socialized. And we're socialized not to do that. We're socialized not to talk about our feelings. We're socialized not to ask for directions, either from when you're driving or life directions, right?
Yeah.
And so these are the things that we're conditioned. So yeah, so that happens. But I think when they come in and they get an opportunity to see other fathers talking, and they feel a permission to do that as well. And the permission is granted, sometimes just by visual, and sometimes, hey, look, you didn't want to say anything. It's no force though. If you're ready to talk, hey, let's have a conversation, kind of like an AA meeting. You can come in, you can talk, you don't have to talk, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I think eventually, they see it's a safe space. And I think that's the important thing, right? There's no judgment, there's no shaming, there's no criticism, there's being held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
That happens, right? When we see, hey, look, I feel like, and that doesn't just come from me, some of the other more seasoned members, but hey, I feel like it's beautiful that you share, but I think there's something else.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're ready to talk about it, sometimes they don't, but then sometimes they come back. But they find that when they do fully talk, fully emote, fully talk about what's going on, then the men can really give some really good input, right? Otherwise, if you give just enough where you want to just be congratulated for what you're doing in that situation, then, the guys there, they can kind of see through that, right? And I think, that's it's a development thing. But to your question, no, it doesn't happen right away.
Yeah, being available to feedback is a pretty vulnerable feeling, and that's not one that we've been culturally conditioned to accept as men. So what is there kind of a common theme among the men that participate in Fatherhood Circle, or they come out of left field, could be anything?
It could be anything, man, because I open it up to all walks of life. So, we have fathers who are older, we have fathers who are younger, we have fathers who are, Black, Spanish, white. So it runs the gamut, right, of fatherhood. And I think, for me, I think that's beautiful because it does, the commonality is that we're all fathers, we're all walking this journey. And, at times we all don't know what we're doing. Right. And so, fully know, but we can piece together different information. And because there's the age differences with fathers, and the age differences brings different ages of their children. We have fathers who've gone through, the toddler, the preteen, the teen. We have fathers in there, a couple of fathers whose children are grown, adults and on out of college and in the workspace. And so we get to have this sort of this gumbo soup of conversation at times, and everyone is bringing in different ideas and different thoughts and suggestions, and it's just it turns out to be a beautiful experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so cool. This podcast is like my way of trying to work towards not being just congratulated for what I'm doing, but like drawing stuff out, so work in progress always. I think that's amazing to bring together a group of people and say, hey, it's okay to, feel about things.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Manhood Camp a little bit. That sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Manhood Camp was a organization that was started first by my business partner, Trayvon Tillis. And he came to me This was about maybe eight or 9 years ago. And he said, because we were working together, and he knew that, I had done this type of work in New York, working with, at-risk youth and parents. So he said, hey, look, I'm starting this organization. Do you want to help me to develop and grow it? And he was already having conversations with a school out here in California where he was going to bring the program. And so I said, look, I love this. Let's have the conversation. And I liked his vision. I liked what he wanted to do with it. And so I sat down with him, with the person, I forget the name of the school, it was James Monroe. And we talked about, bringing the program, our 9-week program, to the school. And the person there, her name was Miss A. She was the disciplinarian person. And so she said, hey, look, I have some what are considered to be incorrigible young men. And, if you want to work with them, you can. And so we did. We started. We came in. And, after like 6 or 7 weeks, she came in. She said, what are you guys doing? I mean, they're really engaged. Yeah. And I think what we did was we from the onset of putting together the organization and putting together our curriculum, we said that it was going to be very engaging. It was not going to be this is what you should do sort of moments, and this is what you need to do, step ABC to matriculate through, being a young man into manhood successfully. But, let's talk about where you are. Let's talk about what you're doing. Let's talk about, the things that are positive about what you're doing, and some things that we feel if you add this in, it could be expanded, and you can get so much more enjoyment out of what you're doing, but also you could set yourself on a path. So it was a lot of engagement. It was a lot of figuring out like what their interests were and developing a curriculum around that. And, and it ran the gamut from music, developing, the musical skills. Some were interested in business. So we put together, different, the way we designed the curriculum with this first endeavor, this first outing of Manhood Camp. What we wanted to make certain that we touched on what they were interested in. So we brought in people, guest speakers. We took them out into the community. We aligned them with different businesses where they can do internships. So we really got them involved in the program. And so we've kept that model going. And we recently, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, we partnered with an organization out here that works with foster youth. And so that same sort of dynamic that we created with that first outing, that first endeavor that we did with the high school, we kept going with this program.
That's amazing. So it's straight from the website. It's a 10-week life skills program focusing on empowering young men. 4 main principles: self-awareness, self-empowerment, personal responsibility, and social responsibility. The kids that you have through the program, is there a commonality among them, similar backgrounds or from similar places?
It is. The first, because we've had the program, because it's a mobile program, so we've been to several different places. But the more recent, working with the organization that we partner with out here, the children are from a fosterhood, of the foster family, foster children. And so there's a very similar background, of course. And, but it's similar and it's different, right? Because what I try not to do, even though there's commonalities of background, we always try and look at the individual, right? So look, you're not necessarily with your parent and you're in this foster home environment, but what is of interest to you? What drives you? What motivates you? What gets you excited, right? And even though we have a 10-week program and the certain things that we do it in such a way that the individual child is able to get the maximum amount of enjoyment and be as productive as they can be within that 10-week dynamic. And again, that's really talking to what, listening to the children, listening to the youth, like what's important to you. What are you excelling at right now, right? And so we had one child who was, who really loved to do coding, right? And so we didn't necessarily have something built in at the time, but we went and partnered with Apple, and we were able to, expand that and put that into our programming. And, so that not only did that child benefit, but of course every other child got the benefit of seeing, the importance and really, not that it's not so difficult to do that, right? And so I think that's the winning formula that we've been using. It's really making sincere connections with the children.
Yeah, and
The
this
youth.
this
That they hate when I call them children, man.
the youth.
The youth.
And this is
Joe
a
Pesci would say the youth.
the Utes. So and this is a nonprofit 501c3. You're funded just through crowdfunding or sponsorships from companies?
Crowdfunding, sponsorships. We've gotten a few grants. You know, it's funny. I take my daughter around with me to these different spaces when I go out to, do the meetings and get the funding. And not that I'm trying to get her to take over the business,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to get her to understand the mechanics of what it takes to run a business. Because I would like for her to be an independent businesswoman at a certain point of her life, right? If that's what she chooses. But I want, because she talks about, Dad, I want to own a business. Like, I want to do this. I said, well, you want to do this right now, right?
Yeah.
But you may not want to do it when you get older. But I love the fact that you're interested in doing it, helping people. So I take her around, Tyler, so she can see that this is what Daddy has to do in order to sustain the business, right? And so I take her to the meetings. I let her see me working online. I let her listen to the phone calls. And I let her just get absorbed into the idea of this is what it takes to do a business.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a lot of extending the hat. Like, hey, you got $1?
Yeah, sure. No, I think that's so important. I read a blog post about somebody doing exactly what you're doing, where you're exposing your daughter to a day in the life just over and over again, and they see the example you're setting. Like, I have a small basement gym, and I want my kids to watch me work hard and sweat and all that. So is that what a lot of your time with your daughter is like working together, showing her these things?
It is. It's working together, taking her different places, exposing her, and meeting people. And part of it is I love for my daughter to be able to, not feel, intimidated or scared around people, right? So I'll go in, I say, hey, Lexi, that's the guy I need to talk to. Why don't you go, let him know I'm here, right?
Yeah.
And so I just want her to feel comfortable with just, expressing and just being in the space of wherever she wants to be. That's the space she should be, right? And so I take her around a lot, but it's not all about that, man. We do a lot of other cool stuff. If not, she'll probably complain a lot more, right? But we go walking a lot. We love doing that. We take our hikes and we just experience life. I try to let her experience life, Tyler, and let her know that, there's a lot of joy out here. Right? There's a lot of joy you can get in life. There's a lot of things that we have to worry about, but I want her to know that even in that atmosphere of worry and doubt, that you can still have a very enjoyable life. Right. And you just have to find the spaces where that's happening.
So I've got a 4-year-old daughter. You've got an 11-year-old daughter. What am I in for, man?
Here's the thing, man. I think the biggest thing is that when they start getting older and they start going to school and the children start to get older, they're going to start having conversations. New things are going to come into their conversations. And, you gotta be prepared for that, right? You gotta be prepared for a certain amount of distance starting to happen between you and the child. And I think as parents, if we quickly recalibrate and get into where they are in the spaces of their thought and their development, I think we can stay in step with them, right? Yeah. And one of the things I do with my daughter, I don't assume that she doesn't know something. Right? Like, even though she doesn't talk about something, whether that be about relationships, physical relationships or things that as a father, I wouldn't necessarily want her to talk about it. I frankly don't want to talk about with her. I don't assume because she's not talking about it, she's not being exposed to it. Right. So, I leave open the space. Hey, look, you are 11 and you're around 11 other 11-year-olds that have phones that I'm sure that are not thoroughly parental guided equipped. So they get to surf the net, right? And so they're going to be exposed to a lot. So I go in, man, and I listen to her. I listen to the games that she plays. She asks me to come in. I do that and I sit down. And even so, some of the games, man, they're like, oh my God, I got to listen to this again. I do, man. And I listen to it. And some of it I generally find like enjoyable, right? So, but I think the biggest thing, Tyler, is that you're going to find that there's going to be more challenge around maybe 7 or 8. As
Yeah.
she gets to 10 or 11, those challenges are going to increase about what she doesn't want to do. She's going to be around people. She's going to become more body conscious, right? So what she wants to wear. And you have to be able to say, hey, look, you know, like my daughter, for instance, she has this thing now where she wants to wear like these tights the girls are wearing, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, hey, look, sweetheart, I don't want to tell you what to wear and what not to wear, right? But you have to understand that as a father, certain things that's happening to you right now, I'm just not fully ready for yet,
Yeah.
right? So I'm asking you if, okay, so you want to wear that, just make sure you wear it with a shirt that covers your hiney, if that's okay. Just long enough, and that you won't have any problems with me, right?
Yeah.
And but then you have to catch yourself, right? Because some of the things that we say as parents are just automatic from what we learned as children from my parents.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. My daughter wanted to get her hair cut, right? And my first reaction was, no, you can't do it, right? And I thought about my no, and I realized that there was no sort of basis for my no other than the fact that my mother and aunts and grandmother basically led me to believe that a girl is prettier with long hair.
Yeah.
Right. So that was the basis of my no. But my daughter said something. I talked to my daughter about this because, you know, I said, if you want to get your hair cut, you have to call your grandmother and talk to her, right? And darn it, Tyler, she made that call, man, right? And so, but then when she got off the phone, she said, okay, Dad, here's the thing. I want you to give me an answer, but I want you to give me an answer not based upon what your mother thinks, not what your aunt thinks, and not what you think, based upon what I've told you what I've wanted. And I thought about it, man, and I really didn't have an answer. Like, I really couldn't give an honest no.
Your 11-year-old asked that of you?
She asked that of me, Tyler. The fact that she asked that of me, I said, you know what, just because the question, the way you posed that, I'm going to get out of your way. And I got out of her way, and she got a haircut, man. And it wasn't, the sun still came up the next morning. But I did that, man, because, you know, she's 11, and I want her to start defining what she sees as beautiful, right? Yeah. Not how the world sees, you know, beauty. If she sees beauty in short hair, then I want her to do that. And I don't want her to feel she had to curtail that thinking because of her father, because of her grandmother, or anyone, right? I want her to start making these decisions. And I think that's the hard part as parents, when you talk about what are you in for. I think letting go of these things that we have control over, or we think we have control over, sort of letting go and letting her find the space. I recently told her that, you know, there was no Santa Claus, man, like last year, right? Yeah. And she knew, but I think she allowed me the space to let her believe that there was still a Santa Claus. And the reason I waited so long is because of that ideal of that control, man. I wanted to still keep her in some sort of, you know, ideal of things being magical and things being beautiful, you know? Yeah. And I think those are sort of the hard things, man. When you see, and you just start seeing the development and you see her moving into womanhood, right? As a young lady. And you start to, and then you start to think about all the other thoughts. And these thoughts will start happening around 10 or 11, because you know that these are the times when you think about when you were 10 or 11, kind of what was going on in middle school. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so those are the thoughts, man, that we don't want as parents, but we have to be able to make the right decisions around what's happening with us and our children.
It's so, I'm finding one of the most, I'm not there yet, but I'm expecting as my daughter and my son both get older, that I'm going to have a lot of self-awareness associated with the context of their lives versus the context of mine. Like you talked about your mom or grandmother, you know, defining something one way because that's the way it was then. But now it's different, trying to like we have to really allow their world. We have to see that. And one of the biggest things, of course, is social media. You didn't have that. I didn't have that. No. Like I know that's something that we wanted to talk about. Like, speak to me about your thoughts on social media and the role it's playing in your daughter's life, her friends' lives, the Manhood Camp kids' lives.
It's enormous, man. And I think that I have this love-hate relationship with social media, right? On the one hand, it definitely has helped me as a business owner with Manhood Camp to get the word out there about Manhood Camp, to do the crowdfunding. But on the other hand, when I think about the children, it sets them in positions where they now have to define their life and their relationships through these really quick moments,
Yeah.
right? And these at times very artificial moments. And it's something that you really can't control, because those things are not going to change until the dynamics of those platforms change. And who knows, they may not, right? Change in a way that's more healthy. And so you worry about what your child is going to be exposed to on there. You know that there's no way to really do a real serious parental control, because if you try to regulate it on one way, they can just go to school and get their, or they can create a fake account that you never know exists.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really just have to, what I find, you really have to have really open and honest conversations with your children. You really have to make them feel comfortable that if they come to you with something, or if you're going to be in a conversation about something that's very sensitive to them, whether it be them liking having a crush on someone or developing feelings for someone, that you're not going to shut that down. You're not going to make them feel like they can't have those moments, or they're too young for those moments, because we had them when we were of their age. So we have to know that these things are going to happen. And so we have to be very open about, hey, this, keep it an open atmosphere and door, like, come to me, talk to me. And when we really need them to come to us, if we're not starting that now when they're young, like they come to us with anything that they come, and we can honestly make them feel comfortable in that moment, that when we really need them to come and they're having real problems in their teenage years, they may find answers out there with their friends, or in, some social media contact that they have, and God knows what they would hear from there. But as a parent, man, I worry about, social media, because there's a lot of creeps out there, right?
Yeah.
So I worry about them making contact. And I know a lot of, and I did this whole, conversation I had developed around human trafficking. I'm not going to get too much into that really at all, but I know a lot of those people prey on, and prey through the social media, right? And so those thoughts, man, as a father and as a youth mentor, I'm concerned with. But I think for me, it's important that I just let my child know, if you need me or if you need to talk to me, I'm here, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's been helpful, and I can see that that's working, because my child does come to me with a lot of things, right? She will come to me and she'll say that, like she did recently. She came and said, "I like this boy," right? I was like, "Oh yeah, that's good, sweetheart."
What's his name? Where's he live?
Right? Where's he live? What's his name? And so I tell you, the first time this happened, and I was really playing, but my daughter, for a couple of months, didn't really tell me anything else about this boy. So when I first met him, right, I said, "Hey, so you like my daughter, huh?" And he got scared. But my daughter was like, "Dad, what are you doing? What are you doing?" Right? And so he stood up. He said, "Yeah," he said, "my daddy's strong." Man, I don't care about your father. Anyway, so for a couple of months, that's just my quirky humor, man. She gets me,
Yeah.
but then she didn't get it, so she didn't really talk to me about this guy for a couple of months, man. So, but in serious though, we have to be able to have these conversations that, as fathers, especially fathers with girl children, we don't want to have that conversation, right? We don't want to think of our little princess potentially, holding hands, or getting a kiss from some boy on the schoolyard. We don't want to think about those things, man. But those things happen, right? So I think I was 12 or 11 when I first kissed some father's daughter. So it's a reality, right? So
Indeed.
there you go.
Well, so do you have any advice for parents on how to establish that relationship with their kids, on getting them to just, getting your kid to trust you?
Mm-hmm. I think you have to I think one of the things that's been helpful for me is that, I spend time with my daughter. I make time for her. We walk, we talk. I leave open for her to talk about things that she wants to talk about. I even bring up conversations about, hey, look, is this, is this going on in school, or have you heard about this, or what have you heard about, things that, men and women do. I bring up uncomfortable conversations with her, but because we spend so much time together, and that time is really, I make time for her on the weekends and during the week. So I create moments that, become opportunities for us to share, one to the other. And I think engaging, if you see her playing or your child playing a particular video game, sit down, ask them earnestly, how do you play that game? Let me play with you. Show an interest in what they're doing. You probably won't go and buy the game yourself, but at least your child will see that you're engaging. When your child brings you a particular thing of interest, whether it be, if she shows interest, he shows interest in drawing or whatever, try to find opportunities for them to do that. Let them know that you are aware of what's of interest to them. So I think those things are important for parents to, be mindful of.
Yeah, most definitely. So between your daughter and the kids that you've mentored, have you seen any like real bullying and had to teach a kid how to handle bullying?
So with bullying, one of the things I tell my daughter and I tell, the youth I work with, don't be quiet about it.
Yeah.
If it's happening to you or with someone, don't be quiet about it, right? Tell someone that you trust.
Yeah.
Right. And if you are talking to your child and you have this open air relationship and you're developing that, your child will come to you. Right. Yeah. And I tell them to, with the kids I work with, I let them know, hey, look, if it's not your foster, parent, then find someone at school that you can trust, that you can have this conversation. But, I tell them, don't engage. Mm-hmm. And with my daughter, I say, look, people, when they're in that bullying mode, there's something there that's something missing. Right. And by you engaging, that's not going to solve the problem, right? Engaging meaning trying to escalate the situation. So if it happens, if you can, get away, just move out of the space. Mm-hmm. Just, whatever you say, don't do anything, say anything to escalate it. Just get out of the space as quickly as you can, because the bully bullies when that person of that object of the bully is right in front of them normally, right? And so then you go find someone who can interrupt that, find someone who can stop that. And it's not easy, man, because sometimes when it's happening on social media, that's, who do you talk to, right? Yeah. But, it's hard because they can trace you and find you in different ways. And so, that's where I think, again, being connected to your child is important, because they will feel more comfortable about talking to you, perhaps about, hey, look, this is happening to me online, right? Yeah. But if you make them feel like, they're going to get lectured or they're going to get in trouble in some way, like, I told you that's what goes on the internet, you shouldn't have been on there, then there's going to be that reticence, going to be that reservation about coming to you. So the big thing is I say, look, it's happening. It's going to happen. Try to find someone. Let my daughter and the youth know. Try to find someone that you trust, that you can talk to, who's responsible, who's going to guide you in the proper way, who's going to do some sort of positive intervention that's not going to escalate the situation. So seek that. Yeah. Seek that first.
Something else I know we wanted to touch on. My segue into it's going to be the question. A lot of the kids that you mentor, single parent kids. Can you speak to the impact of one parent and what that's like for them as the kids?
Yeah, I think
like parent alienation is the phrase.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you have single parents, one of the things I talk about in the Fatherhood Circle a lot is that, especially, fathers who are experiencing this, I said, look, it's painful. It's like a death at times when you're not able to see your child properly. But, so I make certain with the parents that I'm with, that I have the opportunity to work with, I say, if you're experiencing this, don't isolate, find people that you can talk to. When you do see your child, get the most quality time that you can get. And the children that I work with that are going through this, man, I try and do my best to, let them, if they have, if they need to talk about it, to create an atmosphere where they can talk about it. If we have to connect them to counselors, we do that. But I think, when I see it's happening and I have an opportunity to sit with both parents, one of the things that we try and do is to get them to understand that, you guys are going to have these negative feelings about each other, right? We may not be able to do anything about that, but what we can do is make certain that your child is happy, right?
Yeah.
And that involves, your child having a healthy relationship with both parents, right? And if you interrupt that or prevent that from happening, you are not hurting. And this is the bottom line of parental alienation. You're not hurting the parent, and you are hurting the parent, of course, because the parent hurts. But who you're really hurting is the child, because the child misses out on that opportunity to really experience what both parents can bring to that dynamic, right, to the child's life. And ideally, it could be in both if they were together bringing those things. But that doesn't happen. When it's not happening, both parents can still contribute in a very positive way. So it sucks, man. But we try and when we do see it happening, man, we try and do as much as we can to support the youth that it's happening to, either through counseling, through reinforcement of what we're doing, and reinforcing that the child is, it's not his fault or her fault. We try and get the other parent, if there's any, support, legal support that needs to happen, or counseling for him, with the father, if that's going on, or just extra support, calling the father, just try to get him through those moments. We try to create as much as support network as we can to, because it's the worst, man, when you have a child that you love and you can't see because the other parent is using that child as a weapon against you. Yeah.
Yeah. God, that's seen it happen. It's just horrible to see. So, any advice directly to a parent who they're in a perfect world, they'd meet in the middle with the parent, they're the other parent, but they one parent comes halfway and the other parent's not moving. That parent that's working hard, like, what advice can you give to them to be patient or keep their eye on the prize?
Yeah, I think what you have to do is just at a certain point, if you see that, if it's not like a full-blown parental alienation situation, but it's not a co-parenting dynamic and it's more of a parallel parenting, to not worry about what's going on in the other parent's home, as long as the child is not being hurt or abused emotionally or physically. Don't worry about what's going on in the other parent's home. Don't try and have a relationship, a co-parenting relationship, if that can exist. Just do everything that you can do that's constructive and productive for the child when that child is with you.
Yeah.
Right? Do all the things that we've talked about during the course of this conversation, connecting, spending time. Just worry about your relationship with your child. And your relationship with your child and your child's the other parent is going to be what it is.
Yeah.
Right? You can show the example of what a productive parental child relationship is. And as the child gets older, they will have that example. They will say, hey, well, look, I see how my father, as I'm just going to use fathers because I work with fathers, I see how my father is handling my relationship with me versus what's going on over here. And at a certain point, the child won't, even if he's getting confusing messages from the other side, the child will be able to say, look, my father was consistent. My father did this, he did this. He didn't talk about, my mother. I didn't hear any negativity coming, And so I can say that, this is the type of parent, or this is the type of human being that I want to be.
Yeah.
Right. Versus, and I still love my mother, but, I feel that there's some things that needs to happen for her to be the best person that she can be.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to make those same mistakes. So the biggest thing is just concentrate on the relationship with your child, right? Especially at a certain point when you see that co-parenting just is just not possible.
Yeah. So Tell me 3 qualities that you think every father needs, 3 traits, qualities, characteristics.
I think they need to be open. I think they need to be accountable. And I think they need to not be ego driven.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you put into practice to stay that way yourself?
Yeah, I definitely, man. I think when something goes wrong, when something goes wrong in a situation, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
learning, I'm having the ability to do that more, to be accountable. Ego, I sense when something's happening, I sense, when I get upset about something, is this, is this something that, I'm upset about this? Am I upset because I really see some injustice or something being wrong in the situation, in this parenting dynamic, or is the child, am I just upset that the my daughter's not, doing what I say anymore as an 11-year-old like she did versus when she was 3,
Yeah.
right?
Let me ask you, since you've
Mhm.
become a father, how have you become a better father?
One of the things that I did was I stopped parenting. I talked about this earlier. I stopped, parenting on autopilot or just from a robotic sort of this is how things should be done. I
Yeah.
think I become a better parent by listening and by being open to this new world that we spoke about, that our children are moving into, right? And being open to learning about those things, being open to participating in her world. And so I think that has helped me to be a better father and really just a better man, man. It's helped me to put down my ego, right? And it's helped me to, being in the groups that I conduct, it's helped me to be able to, when something is bothering me, to be able to express those things. And so I'm showing, my example of being able to, talk about, what's going on. And my child sees that when I'm having those conversations with my wife, my child can see that, this is how a person should conduct themselves in a
Mhm.
relationship. This is how a person should conduct themselves in a personal relationship and a business relationship. So it's helped me to be a better parent just by being open more and being less ego driven and being more, I love that word, being more accountable,
Yeah.
so.
And
Mhm.
so writing your book, I find writing to be very internal reflection time. So what'd you learn about yourself as you wrote My Daughter's Keeper?
I think the biggest thing was I learned that I was, I learned that I was selfish and in relationships, selfish in that I thought I was, because I was a good guy, right? I thought I was a good guy in some sense, but I learned that, in a lot of ways, I was very selfish, and I thought about, you know, I would create environments that were not violent. They were peaceful. They were joyful, but they were based upon, what I thought was joyful. What I thought, it was very much centered around me, right?
Mhm.
And I realized that in the course of writing this book, that that was something that I needed to change, right? And I definitely needed to change as a father, but also, and coming into a relationship and a new marriage, I needed to be able to look at this world around me and look at other people's needs, not necessarily in relationship to my needs, but how can I better serve their needs and to help them grow, especially my daughter, but even with my wife, helping the relationship grow and being as concerned about her happiness as I, as a man, wanted to be happy in this world. And so I think that was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
one of the things I think that's important for people to have is resilience. How do you teach your daughter to be resilient?
Well, I teach her that, life is going to bring ups and downs, and that she has to, enjoy the ups and learn from the downs. And I think she has to be able to not be afraid to, get back up and to go after what she wants, even though it may take longer than what she expected, because sometimes things in life take longer. And I think by me taking her to these different spaces and me having to, ask over and over again and make calls over and over again and to not be withered in my pursuits. She sees that. So I think through my example, I think she sees that, you know, life could be beautiful, but it takes, you know, it takes time to get to that beautiful, beautiful space.
Yeah. All right. One more question, then I'll get to like rapid fire questions. What is the role of a father?
I think the role of a father is to be, I think the biggest, I think, is to be an example of what the child, you know, how the child should be when they get older. I don't look at traditional roles. Some people would say as the provider or protector. Those things, you know, are present and are dynamics. But I think, you know, showing the child, you know, how to love, really, how to love themselves and how to receive love and give love. For me, that's the biggest role of a father, man, because I think from there, everything can grow. If a person loves themselves and they're able to, you know, take that love and then project that love, that they're going to be pretty terrific human beings as they get older.
That's awesome. So I'll get into some kind of rapid fire questions, and then I'm going to let
Let's
you go
go.
so you can turn the air conditioner on in your car, Mark. What is on your not to-do list as a dad?
Not to, you know, be careful not to define what the child's life should be, meaning that, you know, I don't put the child in a sort of a cookie cutter sort of position where you're saying, okay, and I want you to be, you know, you're going to go to dance class, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, not to define what happiness is for the child.
Love
and to
that.
let that happen naturally.
Awesome. What's the greatest hope you have for your daughter?
That she's happy, man, right? And I'm not going to define what that happiness is, but when she gets older, that she can honestly look around in her life, whatever four walls or whatever space she's in, and say, I'm happy.
Yeah. The book of your life, what chapter are you in now?
Yes, pretty good questions. I think probably I would be in new beginnings, right? I think after going through, you know, the courts and becoming a father, I think I'm in new beginnings because I've learned a lot about who I thought I was versus who I want to be. So this chapter would be new beginnings.
Yeah, love it. How would you describe the type of father you want to be remembered as?
I want my daughter to remember me as someone that she could come to, someone that she can feel comfortable and talking about what she wanted to talk about, what she needed to talk about, and someone that was there for her, you know, no matter what. Yeah. My dad was there for me.
Love it. All right. Who's your favorite television father?
That's a good one, man. You know, I would probably say Uncle Phil from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah. I love that. It never even occurred to me, but that's wonderful. It's great. So Lewis House runs a podcast called School of Greatness, and he fed me this question. I think it's a great question. When do you feel the most loved?
Jeez, that's a great question, man. I think I feel the most loved when I am with my family, my nuclear family, right? I mean, my extended family, you know, now that they're at one time my nuclear, but now extended, I feel love. But I think I feel love when I'm in the space with my family and we are just there watching a television show or just, you know, just being together, man. I think I feel I could see that they're happy, and in that I feel that they know that part of that happiness is based upon what I'm bringing to the family, and I feel love, man.
Awesome. This is my second to last question, and I stole it from somebody else.
Okay.
Tim Ferriss asks this question.
Okay.
So it's called the billboard question. You've got a billboard on the side of the highway, and all the dads are driving by it at 100 miles an hour. You get to, they got to be able to read the message that Mark Winkler puts on the billboard. What's the piece of advice you give to all fathers?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Let me see. Geez, man. If they were driving by, I would say, be the best you. I don't know. Something like that.
That's great. I love that. So, all right, I lied. I'm going to jam one more question in before the last one.
Go ahead.
I love this question. Money's no object, time is no object, whatever. You get to give a gift to every father on the planet. What gift would you give them?
Wow. I would say I would give them something that I want to do. I would give them a trailer, a beautiful trailer home, so they can spend one whole summer or 6 months just driving around the country, just them and their child, and they're married, their spouse, and just experience life, man, and different cultures, different food, and just have uninterrupted moments of family, man. I would give that.
That's a wonderful, I would like that gift. So here's my last question, but first, first I want you to tell me where people can find you on Instagram, on the internet, everywhere, your book, plug yourself.
There you go. Shameless plug moment.
Please.
They can find me on Instagram at Fatherhood Circle, at Fatherhood_Circle. They can find me on Facebook at My Daughter's Keeper, the book. They can find me on my website is markrwinkler.com. The name of the book is My Daughter's Keeper. It will be coming out June 13th. Awesome. So they can find that online. We're going to be looking at getting into some bookstores, but we're first going to start on the online platform. And they can find my organization at manhoodcamp.org.
And that's always looking for donations for the benefit of these thousands of kids that you're impacting. So I hope people will give.
Thank you.
my last question to you, Mark, is in the event this recording lasts for generations to come, what is a message that you would like to give your kids, their kids, their kids, their kids to survive forever?
That you should do whatever you can to get the most enjoyment out of life, but not in a selfish way, and to give the most love that you can. And to, when you walk into a space, try your best to leave that space better than when you entered that space. Do your best to do that.
Mark Winkler, thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate you so much. I learned so much, and I'm just grateful for your time and experiences and your sharing.
I thank you, Tyler. I thank you for this opportunity, man. It was great. I enjoyed talking with you.